Hey guys, you are listening to the Unruly Doctor podcast, a podcast about life, metaphysics, current events, politics, and anything I find interesting. Please subscribe to our channel and like this episode so that we can grow and reach a bigger audience. Enjoy the episode. All right, guys, I got the camera on this time. Let's go. Wait, I got a new quote for y'all. Here it comes.
Do it! Just do it!
Dreams.
So just do it! Make your dreams come true! Just do it!
Just do it. I'm sure, you know what? I'm surprised that Nike never hired Shia LaBeouf. Because, I mean, damn, man, that's passionate right there. Just do it. Oh, you know what? I got another new quote. Listen to this one.
Gotcha, bitch!
I also had a Dave Chappelle, because I'm a big Dave Chappelle fan. Let me get a sip of drink here. Whew. Oh, my God. I don't even know what episode of the podcast it is anymore. I'm having to record this on a Saturday night instead of Saturday morning release time because I was busy all weekend taking in a online course that I am getting higher up in the ranks, I suppose, for nutritional techniques that I know how to do. So if you haven't already, like and subscribe to the channel. Hit the little bell notification, bing, that lets you know when I upload new content. I try to upload as consistently as I can. I shoot for the podcast once a week if I can muster it, and I'm so far typically successful. I think I only missed 1 week out of the entire time. So yeah, and then hopefully, I shoot like one Chiro video a month typically. So you guys really liked the last one. So if you have any any suggestions for new content, hit me up. Give me a comment. Sometimes I feel like it's a ghost town out there. So yeah, I mean, I kind of had a thought for the next episode. I've been thinking about it, I think I always do. And the ideas kind of just come to me eventually. And I think the topic I wanted to actually cover today was, does God pick favorites? And I think that's something that for sure a lot of people think about and question, right? Because you see somebody who's really well off, right? And some of them, on an outward perspective, you might say may not deserve to be as well off as they are, right? A lot of sometimes these people are not good people, yet everything seems to go their way. And I think that really disturbs a lot of people, or at least bugs a lot of people, because, you see something tragic happen to somebody who's like, a really good person. I'll tell you a story, and it is a sad story. So I apologize if it's really not the story that jazzes you up on your weekend, but it's an important story. And you know what? The honest truth is, I wish I remembered her name. I will look this up. You know what? I'm going to look this up right now because I want this person to get credit for who they were. What I'm doing right now is I'm looking at my elementary school, and I'm looking up the name of the memorial. Let's see here. Is this it? Yeah, I'm looking up here's my elementary school. Do they still have it somewhere on here? About us, something. Oh, come on, boy. Gosh, I really want to find this. Well, anyway, I'll probably put it in the description for the video. But so when I was in elementary school, it's being kids, right? Everybody remembers little snippets of elementary school. I particularly remember my gym teacher. I think his name was Mr. Boomer or Mr. way more relevant today, right? Mr. Boomer, something a bomb, or I don't remember, but I remember he always used to do like this. He'd be like, 2 tickets to the gun show, right? And all the kids would go nuts, and he'd throw us around. And good guy. Well, I wonder if he's still there. But I remember like one year we got into school. I don't remember all the details, but I remember like the teachers really sat us down and they were all sad about something. And you're like, well, what's going on? And I know the night before that, when I was driving through town, and this was in Minnesota, this is Apple Valley, and I remember seeing all these cops around and sirens and EMTs and firefighters. I was like, gosh, what happened? It was out my school. So the next morning, when we got to school, the teacher sat us down and said that one of my classmates, a little girl, had slipped on the ice, unfortunately, and the bus ran over her head. And really, really sad. And so actually that night that we were driving past the school, I actually ended up seeing part of the trauma. I might have even seen some blood on the ground. I definitely saw a van with like the parents losing it. And it was really sad. And I still remember that to this day. And then like a week or two later, someone donated a bunch of money, and probably the whole community, I would imagine. And they built this memorial for her, and they planted a tree, and it was really beautiful. But, you can guarantee the number one thing on everyone's minds, including mine and other kids, and definitely the parents, you got to imagine is, why my kid? Why would something that tragic happen to, obviously, someone very innocent? And I think people need to understand like deeper things. I think a lot of times we always say, oh, well, God always has a plan for us. And I think that's like way too basic, because it's not that comforting to just know like really terrible things can happen to really good people just because. I think it's more comforting if we really look at potentially more of the minute details of the whys and the hows. So, as I understand it, the deeper I dig into metaphysical concepts and stuff, sometimes during one of your reincarnations, you may actually choose a very short lifetime. You may actually choose to cut your life short as a child. And why would you want to do that? Well, what would that benefit to anybody? Well, for example, maybe the people who have reincarnated this time around as your parents, are obviously good friends of yours, good souls of yours that you like to hang around with, and they wanted to learn how to overcome severe tragedy. So, you said, okay, so before you guys all came here, you all decided, hey, you know what? You guys are going to meet in college or whatever, and then you're going to have me, and then I'm going to live to age 5 or 6, and I'm going to get hit by a bus. And you guys are going to have to overcome that grief and learn all these different things to learn how to experience those things. And, so that's like one reason. Or maybe another reason is, maybe the soul who inhabited that body of a child, for example, just wanted to experience a couple little things, wanted to do just a couple little things, and then they wanted out of that lifetime. They only wanted to do like just a couple things of, enjoying childhood and, maybe doing some good things on earth and maybe, being a gift to their parents, and they just want to get in, they want to get out. Another way you could look at it is maybe they're on one of their last lifetimes. Maybe this is, sorry for the constant phlegm, apparently. Maybe they just wanted to, maybe they're on one of their last lifetimes and like this is, the end for them in terms of returning here. So they wanted to kind of go out with just one last little short one, close a couple loose ends, and then they're out. Because a lot of people, they really focus on inequity. And if you look at the news today, everything is about where am I compared to someone else? That's what everybody focuses on all the time. This person has this much money. I have this much money. That person looks like this. I look like this, right? Talk about skin color and how good do you look? Are you good looking, not good looking? How smart are you versus somebody else? What kind of job do you have versus somebody else? What kind of life do you have versus somebody else? What kind of talent do you have versus somebody else? A lot of what we do now is constantly compare ourselves to something else or somebody else, I should say. And we do it to an exhaustive degree. I mean, I think a lot of you could agree on that, you know, these days we, to an exhaustive level, spend so much time and energy comparing ourselves to other people, you know, in all those different categories. And really, what purpose is it serving any of us? It's not really serving you anything, you know? And in fact, it leads to what you might call a lower vibrational frequency of emotion, jealousy, anger, right? These are low vibrational emotions. And for those of you who haven't heard the term low vibration, it's literally talking about like the oscillatory rate or the, you know, the true frequency of negativity. They've done some studies where they actually measure what negativity looks like versus positivity looks like. Like there was a Japanese scientist who said negative things to water and then froze the water droplets and then looked under a microscope and looked at what patterns did it form versus positive things and loving things said to water, froze it, looked at the patterns it created in its like little snowflakes. And in the positive snowflakes, it created sacred geometry. And in the negative water droplets, it was total chaos. So when we're talking about negative versus, you know, lower vibration, negative frequencies, higher vibration, positive frequencies, or even talking, it's even measurable. You can even do scientific studies. You can measure it. Everybody knows the old, you know, old time study that we've been talking about since grade school about saying bad things to a plant versus good things to a plant. Good things grow a plant, negative things kill a plant. Except, I guess, in one instance I've ever heard, I treated a guy straight from Mexico, and he was a farmer, and he had this like giant, according to him, a very large apple grove. I think it's a grove, and he said he had one particular tree out of this grove of like a ton of trees that would not ever produce apples. It wouldn't produce. And apple trees are not expensive. You don't want to just rip it out and get rid of them. They're not cheap. So when he was in Mexico, because he also had back problems, this is the reason why him and I met. He had back problems, so he went to a Mexican medicine man at that time, whatever time this was, long time ago. And the Mexican medicine man also knew a lot about spirits and plant growing and things like that. And it's kind of a funny yet sad story, to be honest with you, but it is kind of funny. But the Mexican medicine man told this guy, hey, man, take a branch off the tree, pull it off. And then he literally tells my patient at the time, he says, I want you to beat the living hell out of this tree with its own branch and tell it if it doesn't produce apples, you're going to tear it from its roots and you're going to chop it up, basically murder this tree. Okay, now I know this sounds totally bizarre, but this is like ancient knowledge. So what does my patient do? He goes, he rips that limb off. He starts beating the hell out of this tree like it's a person, right? Slapping it with its own branch and kicking it. And God only knows what this tree was thinking, right? Because I believe trees have souls. I believe they're actually part of our recycling of souls. So, you know, this poor tree was probably like, oh my God, he's beating me. And he rips his arm out, right? He's beating me with my own arm. I just like have this hilarious conundrum in my head, right? Of like, you know what I mean? Like this tree's like armless, and then this guy's like beating you with your own arm. Okay. And you know what? Guess what? Sure enough, beating the hell out of this tree with its own branch and telling it if it doesn't produce, he's going to chop it and pull it out. He said the next season and ever since then, it had produced the most apples of any tree in his entire grove. So that's the only instance I know of negativity creating a positive result. But the other thing I imagine is, I bet those apples didn't taste very good. I bet those apples were so bitter and gross and not sweet, right? I bet, you know, I just imagine this tree like sitting here like this, and it's like, that's right, you motherfucker. I'm going to produce more apples than anybody other fucking tree in this thing, but they're going to taste like shit. they're going to, that's the way, just you wait. Just you wait and enjoy that poisoned apples I'm putting out. Right. But that's the only instance that I've ever seen or heard of where allegedly the negativity created I guess, a positive reaction. But the vast majority of the time, it's the exact opposite. So it's really not mentally healthy for us to constantly compare ourselves to other people and situations and places. And unfortunately, that's like all that we do these days, right? Where people are so hyper focused on equality, equitable outcomes, right? And that totally feeds back into the propaganda of stakeholder capitalism. So if you didn't watch my last episode or listen to my last episode, you really should, because stakeholder capitalism is a word you're going to get very familiar with, whether you like it or not. You could also say equitable, social justice, racial justice, all these different things of today, right? Sexism, right? Feminism. I mean, these are really just propaganda labels to separate people, separate classes, rich, poor, middle class. It's all just to create division, because people in power understand and realize that if you really just stop caring about skin color, if you really just stop caring about rich versus poor, if you really stop caring about man versus woman, if everybody just came together and just said, we are people, you'd lose all power. Because then, instead of wasting all of our time focusing on these negative divisionary tactics, we might actually sit down and say, shit, we all could make more money. Hey, you know what? Why don't like a couple million of us, why don't we all pool our own money? And why don't we make our own bank? Why don't we make our own bank with really low interest rates that never go up high? Oh, okay. And why don't we make our own bank that has no fees, no hidden fees, none of this BS? Wow. Okay. Hey, you know what? Why don't a couple million of us get together? Why don't we make our own school system? You know what? Our school system really sucks. Why don't we make our own that is not only affordable, it's the money that we pool into it doesn't go to just administrators and higher ups and boards and licensing fees and all this other crap. Why don't we just hire good people, pay them more, make sure that the money that we pool in for more money actually goes to the teachers so we can hire better, more qualified people who are happier. Why don't we give them a little more freedom? Why don't we stop focusing on standardized testing and all this other stuff that we know study after study after study doesn't work, and actually creates kids that are less intelligent every year because they don't actually have critical thinking anymore. But by the way, I don't think that's by mistake. I think that they're creating a class of citizens that don't critically think on purpose, who are just smart enough to get basic work done, but also not be motivated for more, but yet somehow want to be paid to do less. Right? So this is all on purpose. It's part of a master plan for control and power. And, unfortunately, we're starting to run pretty low on people who can recognize and understand stuff like that. It's the world we're living in, guys. Critical thinking is slowly but surely dying very quickly. So, circling back like Jen Psaki to the idea of this equitable outcome thing and the constant focus on other people and how it is self-destructive, a lot of people actually start to self-doubt themselves because of these little propaganda implantations in their head, right? Like someone says, well, I can't be successful because I'm black. Okay. Oh, the police are always after me all the time. Okay. How are you going to change that? Well, we're going to do, more training, and we're going to defund them, and it doesn't work. Sorry, that doesn't work. And in fact, the facts don't even support that anyway. The fact, if you actually look at the statistics, if I can say the word, the stats, they don't even match that anyway. That's part of the propaganda and the brainwashing that's really going on in the United States, is because they want to keep creating this racial division between white and black in particular. They're going to keep this emotional narrative going on in the mainstream news and media. You know, every time someone of one race kills another race, it's always going to be mainstream news. If one race kills the same race, never mainstream news. Don't believe me? Go look. You know, go to DuckDuckGo, Brave, and look up like top murders of the week. I don't know. I'd be kind of sad, but you know, who got murdered this week? And you're going to find a lot of people of the same race killing each other. Never makes it on mainstream. Only if it's a white person killing a black person or an Asian person or a woman or whatever. And that's just to create division. It's not racist to say that. This is just something you can literally observe in today's world. That's what they want you to focus on, to create division, to fool you into thinking that you're not intelligent, right? It's really sad when someone says, I can't be successful because I'm a woman or because, I'm of a different racial ethnicity. In the United States, that is the least true statement of anywhere in the world. It doesn't mean it's perfect, but that is the least true statement for where we are in comparison to anywhere else in the world. You know, the one thing about the United States of America that's still here now, but I don't believe will be here much longer, is the capability to come here with nothing and to leave this earth with a lot of things. You know, immigrant story after immigrant story after immigrant success story of people coming here with literally $4 in their pocket and retiring with millions. You can't do that anywhere else in the world besides the United States. That's one of the most undeniable facts that's been there for quite some time. Unfortunately, a lot of people have had the veil lifted over their eyes, and they've been fooled into this idea that this social equitable system is going to somehow make everybody rich. That's not what's going to happen, guys. It's never worked like that. It never works like that. And in fact, it creates more division between people because you're going to have people who work. This is how it's always been in humanity. There's always people who are harder workers. There's people who are lazy workers. There's people who are mid-level, kind of just do what they do, whatever workers. There's people who are better at delegating. There's people who are better at getting instructions. There's people who have creative new ideas that are worth inventing and purchasing that everybody wants and that elevates the entire humanity, right? A humankind gets elevated because of their great original idea. And some just don't create those ideas, but are talented in other areas. This is just the diversity of human life. This is how it has always been. It's how it will always be. Everybody is unique. It's okay to have varying levels of intelligence. It's okay to have varying levels of colors on your skin. It's okay to have varying levels, of wealth. It's okay to have a varying level of wealth. If you want more wealth, it's the United States. You got to work harder. You got to work smarter. That's how life works. If you want to make more money, you got to look at, why don't I make a lot of money? Because there's always a way to make more money. If there's anything that I've learned in the United States, you can always make more money. All the ways. Now, the real challenge is, how do you make more money intelligently without working much harder? The most rich people that you find in the world just found a way to make more and more money with working less and less hours and time and things of that nature. So then people go look at that and they say, oh my God, that guy's really filthy rich and he barely does anything. Shame him, hang him from the rafters. Right? Instead of just saying, oh, God, that guy had a great idea and he was really smart. And then he created a system where he hires all these other people to do certain tasks. And I mean, that's just intelligence. That's just working smarter, not harder. And here's the other thing too. I think going back into that, before anybody gets too angry, and I hope you don't, it's just an opinion. That's one thing I would like back. I would like to have it back, that you can have an opinion without everybody going into uproar, and now all of a sudden you're an enemy because you have an opposing opinion and I'm hurt because your opinion is not the same. Why don't we just all have opinions and be cool with it, dude? Just get over it. People have different opinions. Opinions are like assholes. Everybody's got one. So, that's just how it is. But here's the other thing too, is the diversity of situations that we're all in are what, in terms of reincarnation, give you new and different and interesting lessons. I may live a life as a rich man. I may live a life as the poorest man, homeless man. I live a life as a woman who got abused. I live a life of an immigrant who came here with nothing and then built up into a huge fortune. Each one of these types of lives creates a different and interesting experience of which you learn multiple lessons that I could never even articulate, lessons that I'm not even remembering. So if we were all the same, we all had the same amount of money, we all did this, and we sheltered ourselves from traumas and all of this stuff that is now what people apparently are desiring, where's the spice to life? If you honestly believe you only get one shot at this, that's okay. I'm not here to tackle your belief system, right? I'm not here to force you into the belief of reincarnation. I think your soul will eventually get to that conclusion, and maybe that's 80th or 90th, 100th time around. But, once again, just an opinion. But that is the point of everybody having different equities, quote unquote, is because these different equities are what create the intrigue of life, the spice of it. Now, obviously, the bad things of hate and, whatever, all that stuff, of course, we don't want to have that, right? We can slowly overcome the need for the experience of negativity, I believe. But we need to stop taking our differences and levels of success and things and then using that as fuel for hatred and division. For sure. Because like I said, there's a reason there's differences. When you're cooking, you can't have all just salt in your meal. You can't have all just pepper. Can't all be garlic. Can't all be onion powder. It's gross. Right? You gotta have a little salt, a little pepper, a little onion, a little garlic. A little rosemary. Ooh, spicy. Right? That's what makes your food great. Right? The mixing of the spices. And nowadays, everybody's like, I just want one. Straight through. Equal parts. And that's just, that don't make a good meal, guys. That don't make a good meal. So I think that's easily tying into that main theme, I think, of today's topic, which was, why aren't we all made the same? But, why do good things happen or why do bad things happen to good people? And maybe why do good things happen to bad people? And, just getting philosophical, late night, just getting philosophical here. Like, what makes a bad person? Where do you draw the line of a person just making mistakes into a person becoming a bad person? And even if they fall into that realm, can we forgive them for things? Can they come out of it and become what you'd call a good person? Are any of us really good people? Big philosophical question. Just watched a show on Netflix. Let me get a little water. Just watched a show on Netflix called The Tinder Swindler. And really interesting, crazy Netflix documentary about a guy who, kind of became a con man in his late teens, moved from Israel to the United States, and then created this chain of scamming women to thinking he was super hyper rich. So, he was renting jets and Lambos and going to exclusive clubs and taking everybody to dinner and, buying millions of dollars worth of Gucci and all this other stuff. But what he was doing was he was creating these fake scenarios telling the women, hey, I need money now. I need you to transfer it. And then like subsequently woman to woman to woman to woman to woman, he would use this new woman's funds to pay to trick this one, to pay the last one, trick the last one, trick the last, and it would create this like cycle. But then like here he was in the middle of it, getting to like live this luxurious lifestyle. And I guess the reason I bring it up is because like a lot of people watch that and think that guy is a terrible person. Now, I think you could argue he's not a great person, but people call him pure evil. And, it's one of those things where it's just like, I used to think stuff like that. And then, I realize you got to look like way deeper, because people are not just black and white simple. You don't know what his childhood was. We don't know where this trigger, this need for whatever comes from. Maybe he needed to be seen because he wasn't seen for who he really was, and he was embarrassed of who he really was. And that's sad. Like he wasn't proud of who he was. He felt the need to be somebody else. And that's within our own judgment system. The women he ended up being with, some of these really beautiful models and other things. And to be honest with you, probably never would have taken a look at him if you looked at who he was truly. They never would have even talked to him, never would have considered him dating material. And so it probably created a pressure for him to feel the need to do this, to create this facade that he was this multimillionaire son of a, like a diamond exec and company. And so if you're really looking at, the whole picture, to me, then you can understand that he really wasn't, it could happen to anybody who really feels that sting deep enough into their soul of the need to be somebody else because society and women or whatever didn't want you for the version of who you really were. And I totally get that. I get where that could come from. And now that I'm a different person, I think I've grown a lot more than someone who would do that. So even if I didn't have the right looks, if I didn't have the right job, if I didn't have the right intelligence, I don't think I would do that, but you don't know. I don't think a lot of us know. Because, the honest truth is the people who watch and listen to my podcast probably are decent looking, decently intelligent, just, average Americans. So like, a decent looking average American with decent money and whatever says, gosh, I would never do that. Well, maybe if you're super hyper poor and, you had an attraction towards women who typically would never look at you and whatever, maybe you would. You came from very humble beginnings and you weren't necessarily talented. You weren't you didn't necessarily have the genius level intelligence of like a Tesla or a Microsoft, Bill Gates situation where you're going to invent something that the whole world loves and then creates actual wealth from your ideas. You could see how somebody could get backed into a corner to do something like he did. So, and I've talked about that before in other podcasts where, it's like you're talking about 3D thinking whenever you're presented with an idea, a situation, a person, a comment, or whatever it could be, and you look at it from all perspectives instead of just picking, the easy route, which would just be like, that's a bad person. I think if you consider everything I just said, you might say, that he has some very deep psychological issues where he felt the need to do this. Instead of saying it's a bad person, you might say, gosh, a lot of people could be in those shoes with some of the situations and pressures he was presented as a child. That's probably how you should look at it more, right? So once again, kind of like from previous podcasts, that 3D thinking being a big thing. And it doesn't mean I don't feel bad for the women in this scenario. I do. I do think some of them were probably a little starstruck type situation where they really did like the flashy money and lights and, the possibility of being with a rich man and flying around the world in a private jet. I mean, I guess who wouldn't, right? But, and so, for them, it's also a great lesson too. I mean, that's the thing. If you, kind of like I said in my last episode, when you find the silver lining to negative situations, right? Like these women had learned you would hope, quite a large lesson. How do you now come out of a big hole that you dug yourself, right? With these giant loans that they were taking out, some of the women, hundreds of thousands of dollars. How do you dig yourself out of that hole? How do you now, when you're dating somebody, try not to pick them by how much money they make, what clothes they wear, and what, jet they're flying? Because unfortunately, some of those women definitely were looking for a rich man, and they got burned for their own, kind of surface level desires, right? Because that's kind of what it is. It's a selfish desire to be the rich person. If the same man had presented as not a rich person, I don't think all the women that end up being with him would have been with him, period. Because there's obviously a motivator for why he did it in the first place. If he had all these women coming after him previous to being quote unquote fake rich, back when he was in Israel and didn't have any money and was, whatever, I don't think we'd have felt no need to do all these things for the most part. So it's faults on both ends. It's, everybody wants to just shame this guy, but, the people who were victimized as well need to learn their own lessons for why they allow their desire for this wealth thing to get in the way of their, what you might call better judgment. Doesn't mean he's still not the main one at fault, but that doesn't mean that the people in that situation who were victimized are also not at some level of fault themselves. Right. And these days someone might listen to that and say that's controversial, but I think honestly, if you sat people in a back room somewhere and everyone was talking about it, I think that's what most people would probably say, is that there's faults on both ends. Most of it goes on him, but still some on the women as well. Once again, 3D thinking, and I think that whole situation really emphasizes, the focus on the divisionary labels and things once again. This guy's this desperate need that he needed to be rich because there's a negative connotation with being poor. We all should be rich and wealthy. And I just don't think that's true. And luckily, there's a lot of people who just don't have the motivation to be rich and wealthy, either. I don't think everybody's lifetime was designed for you to be wealthy. Once again, if we were all wealthy, you wouldn't learn all these different lessons, like a lesson of working that hard day's work to just get by. There's a lot of great lessons in that, I mean, yeah, you could argue things like, oh, well, I don't need money to be happy, but I'd sure be happy with more money. Kind of the stereotypical things you hear people say, well, I don't need money, but it doesn't hurt to have more. It's, yeah. I mean, I think we could leave that part of that because I think that's one of our big problems. And obviously money is going to be a bigger topic in the near future because of all the inflation and, the stakeholder capitalism, all that stuff that's coming. Money is going to be a big conversation. But luckily, I think some of the, how do I want to say it? I think some of the facade is starting to fall away from those in power. So I'm kind of curious to see where it ends up going as people are starting to wake up just a little bit because, everybody trusted Big Daddy government, and all of a sudden people are starting to question a little bit. Not a lot, not forever, not everybody. Some people are still in the matrix, but, I think actually legitimately some are starting to come out of it, which is really cool. Because for a long time, people like me who would talk about things like I'm talking about right now, besides putting people to sleep because they were bored of my ideas, always called you a conspiracy theorist or you're crazy and whatever. And then sure enough, a lot of the things that people like me have been talking about a long time started to hit the fan, unfortunately, and it's waking some people up, which is really great. So I think this is a great place to, leave you with these thoughts and things. So, just seriously, in summary, stop judging yourself so harshly. I did it for a long time, to the point where even when I opened my practice, I was like, after a year and a half of being open, I started to question, I'm like, did I open a successful practice for me, or was I doing it for somebody else? And the honest truth was, I think I actually was doing it for somebody else. I think I was trying to prove something to, my mom and stuff like that for some odd reason. I mean, we haven't spoken in a long time. I mean, I left 13 years ago. But, it's one of those things, once again, where you're caring so much about these things that, that don't matter, and you're creating more stress in your life by focusing so heavily on yourself and your differences from others, when really you just got to learn to be happy with yourself. Be happy with who you were made to be. Because the honest truth is, you probably chose a good chunk of that. You just don't remember choosing a lot of the good things you chose. Look at your trauma with a silver lining. Stop focusing on labels. How many times you got to see a news article where it says the race of the person on the news article? Ugh. Why does it matter? Just say man did this. Woman did this. Boy, young boy does this. Why has it got to be race, gender, it's all this, I don't know, religious thing, Muslim man does this, it's like, just a human being did a bad thing. Okay, here's what happened. That's how you come out of it, man. Denzel Washington was talking about that one time when I watched him on an interview, and he was talking about how the way you get rid of racism, for example, is you stop talking about race. Make it that easy, man. And then generation after generation of people, they will stop caring, and they will stop calling people by their color. You go to England, man. There's different colors of people in England. They're all English. Go to Puerto Rico. There's about 1 million different colors of people in Puerto Rico. They're just Puerto Ricans. Nobody says there's a black Puerto Rican or a more white Puerto Rican. If you were born there, dude, you're just Puerto Rican. And I know this because I dated a Puerto Rican. They're just, the only thing they care about is that that they're Puerto Rican. So, they're just very proud to be Puerto Rican. So stop doing that to yourself. Find the silver lining in your traumas. Do the 3D thinking. Try to look at a scenario from all perspectives. Look at your abuser from a new perspective. Try to figure out why they did what they did. Deep down somewhere, what happened to them that they felt the need to do whatever they did to you. And let it go. You gotta let that stuff go, guys. So I hope this episode was good for you. I hope it was enlightening. If you have any ideas for episodes, once again, go down below, leave a comment, do something. Email me at info@springbackchiro. Once again, try to upload the podcast once a week. So please like and subscribe to the channel. And of course, you can find videos of chiropractic and my nutrition stuff soon. But that's all on YouTube. So you can just YouTube Springback Chiropractic. We're also on Facebook, Springback Chiropractic. And of course, the Unruly Doctor on Spotify. All right, guys. Have a great day.